Okay, hi guys. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 20 favourite films from 1998. These are all in accordance with the release dates from IMDb, and again, there's no real true right or wrong to this list. These are just my top 20 personal favourite films from this year. So, that being said, I'm going to get straight into the honourable mentions. Have a small handful, not too many. We're going to quickly rattle those off now before I get into the main list. So first up, in terms of honourable mentions, is Pixar's second film, Bug's Life. Really enjoyed this one as a kid. Gets a lot of hate for a Pixar film, but I still think it's good. Still some really, really good, enjoyable stuff in there. Next honourable mention for me is Out of Sight with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez. Great little sort of thriller movie, this one. Really enjoyed it. Next up, got The Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Great little family adventure film. Gods and Monsters with Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen. This was a really, really dark movie. This sort of follows the director of the first two Frankenstein movies, the old Universal ones. And it just leads to this sort of creepy relationship between him and his the sort of groundsman at his house. But I really dug it. Thought it was really, really interesting. Next honourable mention is Wesley Snipes in Blade. I don't really know what to make of this film. I don't know whether I liked it or not the first time I saw it, but I watched it again for this and thought it was pretty good. Got some really good action sequences in it. Great vampire kills. I love the opening scene, sort of this underground disco, and then the fountains come on and it's all blood. It just leads to this great action opening sequence, which is just absolutely fantastic. Next honourable mention for me is Wild Things. I won't get too much into this one, but there's a scene involving Nev Campbell, Denise Richards, and Matt Dillon, and you just think to yourself, Matt Dillon, you lucky bastard. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on that one. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This is just another film that is just too trippy for me, but I guess that's the point of the film. Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, directed by Terry Gilliam. The movie just looks visually stunning, but I really couldn't get into what was going on with this one. Next honourable mention for me is Michael Bay's Armageddon. This movie's just over the top sci-fi action, and it tries to be epic as well, which it kind of sort of captures for me though. But the best thing about it is that Aerosmith song. Night at the Roxbury, great comedy. This sort of like a debut comedy from Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan, about these two brothers that try and get in this nightclub called the Roxbury, but just like doesn't really seem to happen for them. And this movie plays the Hadaway song "What Is Love" to death, but it just never really gets old for me. I absolutely love that song, and I really sort of love this film. It's just really funny. Next honourable mention for me is Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. I love this film. It's the most competent Scooby-Doo property I think that's been made. It's just so enjoyable and so entertaining. It's you might be sort of turned off like it's Scooby-Doo. It sounds a bit childish, but the movie's just way cleverer than what it probably gets the credit for. And I just really enjoyed it. Next honourable mention for me is Ants. Sort of came out pretty much at the same time as A Bug's Life. I'll leave it up to you to which one you sort of prefer. I enjoy both of them. This one's got a real stellar cast to it when you think about it. It's got Woody Allen, Jennifer Lopez, Sylvester Stallone, Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, Christopher Walken. Dan Aykroyd. It's just absolutely insane when you think about it. My last honourable mention is another sort of kids movie. It's not really I remember going to see it at the cinema when it came out, and I was so hyped for it, and I sort of left a bit disappointed, a bit hollow, thinking that really wasn't what I expected. But as time went on, I was sort of really warmed to it, and it's Joe Dante's Small Soldiers. Yeah, it's sort of about these two um, two different types of toys that sort of get merged together with this sort of military chip, and they just go absolutely insane. Um, but when you know who the cast who do the voices for the actual toys are, your mind sort of gets blown a bit by how many famous people they got involved in it. But yeah, it's one I still really enjoy. It's a good little family film. So there are my honourable mentions. I'm going to get straight in to the list now, and at number 20 for me is the film that actually won Best Picture this year, and that is Shakespeare in Love. Yeah, I kind of like this movie. It's a little bit over the top for what it is when you think about it. All that Shakespearean stuff, particularly the opening scene with Geoffrey Rush. But yeah, it's just got a really weird yet really good cast. People you just wouldn't expect to be in it. It's got Ben Affleck in it, Judi Dench, who actually won Best Supporting Actress for like appearing in the film for like 5 minutes at the end. Just it's crazy when you think about it. Martin Clunes is in there as well, who you just wouldn't expect to see. There's some funny stuff involving him as well. Ben Affleck, yeah, just this really enjoyable little film that sort of just surprisingly won Best Picture at the Oscars. So yeah, number 19 for me is probably one of the best animated films to come out of the 90s. That is the Prince of Egypt. Yeah, it's the Moses story that we all know. Has an absolutely fantastic soundtrack to this film, and an absolutely stellar cast. You know, just to name but a few people in it, you've got Sandra Bullock, Michelle Pfeiffer, Martin Short, Steve Martin, Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, Jeff Goldblum, Patrick Stewart. Yeah, this film is just epic in every sense of the word. Yeah, one of the most expensive films to come out at the time as well. I think it was the most expensive animated film by DreamWorks, but the movie just looks absolutely stellar. I can't really praise it enough. It's coming up next for me at number 18 is Rowan. I'm not going to say too much about this film, but it was just a surprising little good action movie, this, with a great cast. You got Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, and Jonathan Pryce in there as well. I massively enjoyed it. Thought it was just absolutely fantastic and entertaining. Yeah, check Rowan out if you've not seen it. It's coming up next for me at number 17 is Dark City. Yeah, this is just another really sort of little underrated sci-fi movie. A lot of twists and turns in this one. Reminds me of Blade Runner a little bit as well. Yeah, you've got another fantastic stellar cast in this with Jennifer Connelly, Kiefer Sutherland, Richard O'Brien, who of course probably most famous for Rocky Horror Picture Show and The Crystal Maze, William Hurt as well. Yeah, just a lot of twists and turns in this great underrated sci-fi film. It's coming up at number 16 for me. It's probably really good horror film. That is the Japanese version of Ring. Not a big fan of the American version. This is sort of my go-to one when I want to revisit that story. Obviously, it's about the videotape that when you play it, you receive a phone call and it will tell you that you will die in 7 days after you've watched the videotape. But this one just really has that creep factor to it that the American one just didn't really capture for me. It's just super terrifying and super scary. Watch this one in a dark room if you can. Bigger screen as possible and just turn the lights off. Yeah, just super creepy, and I loved every minute of it. Coming up next for me at number 15 is Wes Anderson's Rushmore. Yeah, just another little fun little comedy movie with a lot of drama and heart to it, which I really enjoyed. Sort of about this love triangle. You got Jason Schwartzman, who's like this sort of school kid who falls in love with his teacher, but she's in love with Bill Murray's character, and it just has all those little Wes Anderson idioms that you would expect to it. But yeah, I just massively enjoyed it. If you're a fan of Wes Anderson, you've probably already seen this film. But I really dug it. Of course, Bill Murray and Jason Schwartzman would go on to become sort of Wes Anderson go-to actors and staples in his movies. But yeah, it's one I really enjoyed. So, coming up next for me at number 14 is probably one of the biggest comedies of the year, and that is There's Something About Mary. You could not really escape this film when it came out. It was fucking everywhere. My first introduction to it was on like ITV2 late one night, and I remember taping it off the TV, and I just the comedy in this is just so off the hook and so insane. It's done by the Farley brothers, who did Dumb and Dumber as well. The opening scene with Ben Stiller's character, where he's at Mary's house and he's in the bathroom, and he gets his you-know-what caught in the zipper. Just absolutely insane. And then we sort of eventually see the state of it afterwards, and it's just absolutely crazy. The premise to the movie is basically this woman called Mary just has every sort of man in her life just ends up getting infatuated with her and falling in love with her, and it's just absolutely, insane and crazy. You've got Matt Dillon in there as well. Lee Evans, who's just hysterical in this film as Tucker. I won't dare spoil what happens with his character, but I really do enjoy Lee Evans as a stand-up, and seeing him in this film, he really made me crack and howl at some of the stuff he does. But yeah, it was just a superb little comedy. So, coming up next for me at number 13 is Pleasantville. I massively enjoyed this film. Sort of follows this brother and sister who end up sort of getting transported back to this black and white 50s sort of sitcom world in their television, but it was just so surreal and so enjoyable to watch. It was just really strange. I love Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. They have really good star power, those two, for me. Whenever I see them pop up in films individually, it makes me want to watch that film, because they just have that star power that makes you come back to want to see them. But I really enjoyed it. I don't want to get too into the plot with this one, because I think to do that would to sort of be to spoil the film. It's best just left to me to advise you to watch it. I recommend all these films, obviously, by the way, but it was just hugely enjoyable. So coming up next for me at number 12 is another sort of similar film to that, but it's The Truman Show. Probably arguably one of Jim Carrey's best performances, if not the best performance by Jim Carrey. Very sort of serious film for him, coming off the previous films he did in his career in the early 90s. But yeah, this basically sort of follows a man who was orphaned, and he was sort of adopted by this television network, and basically made a television show out of his life, pretty much from day one, completely documenting him 24 hours, but he doesn't know. He's completely oblivious to it, and the film just sort of covers that point in his life where he starts to become aware of it and what's actually happening. But it's a great character study and a great character piece, with really sort of an ending that leaves you wanting to know more. But it still ends on that perfect note. Fantastic cast in it as well, just absolutely superb. I know a lot of this appears very highly on a lot of people's top favourite films alone, but for me, I just don't quite have that connection with it. it's still a very well made film, very well acted, and it is absolutely superb, and I completely recommend it. But it was just such a breath of fresh air to see Jim Carrey tackle a role like this. But it's massively, massively enjoyable. So coming up next for me at the number 11 spot is The Negotiator with Sam Jackson and Kevin Spacey. I absolutely love this film. Great suspenseful little action film. You've got Sam Jackson, who does play this negotiator, who's used to sort of defusing really high tense situations. But then the film puts him in a situation where he becomes the kidnapper and the hostage holder, and Kevin Spacey has to become the negotiator to talk the negotiator out of that situation. And it just leads to, again, cover-ups, twists and turns. Massively, massively enjoyable, entertaining film. Check it out if you've not seen it. So, next for me, at the number 10 spot, is Enemy of the State by Tony Scott. Again, pretty similar to The Negotiator, just a great action movie. Pretty similar to Rowan as well. It basically sort of sees Will Smith go on the run from the state by sort of accident. He gets this tracker put on his person and ends up getting chased. It just leads to some absolutely fantastic action sequences as well. Great cast. You got Gene Hackman in there as well, John Voight. And the opening to this, the closing to the film, the final action set piece, reminded me very much of True Romance with this crazy, crazy shootout. Obviously, it's done by the same director and Tony Scott. But I massively, massively enjoyed it. Wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. But yeah, that's why it makes the number 10 spot for me. I thought it was a great, great action film. At number 9 for me is probably a film not a lot of people have heard about, but it's Ken Loach's My Name is Joe, starring Peter Mullen, who's an absolutely fantastic, underrated actor. He's in, most notably, probably Deathly Hallows Part 1. He's in great Paddy Considine film called Tyrannosaur, and also pops up in Children of Men by Alfonso Cuarón. But yeah, this is sort of about a gangster who sort of wants to break away from that lifestyle, and it leads him down a very dangerous path with certain gangsters. They want him involved, they want him working for them. They don't really take kindly to him, turning them down. But he sort of meets a woman and wants to sort of start a fresh life and sort of forget about his past, but it keeps pulling him back in, and it leads to an absolutely tense as fuck climax, which I just really, really enjoyed. Left me sort of on the edge of my seat. I know it's a cliche, but this film really, really did. I was just hooked with how this film was going to end. If you can find it or get hold of it, I highly recommend you check this one out. So, coming in at number 8 for me is Vincent Gallo's Buffalo 66. I just really, really dig this movie. Very small movie, but again, it's so effective with its story and its dialogue. So pretty much stars Vincent Gallo's character, who pretends to sort of be this CIA agent, but he's actually just sort of come out of prison, and he ends up meeting and kidnapping Christina Ricci's character, and he wants her to pretend to be his wife to show off to his really, really dysfunctional family. But again, I just thought this was such a fantastic film. Really, really underrated. Never really gets talked about. Completely gets looked over. His directing of this film as well is just absolutely superb and unique. I haven't really seen anything like this at all. the end scene as well, which I won't spoil, it just has this great sort of freeze frame still work that I just really, really enjoyed and thought it was really good. Got Angelica Houston in this as well. Mickey Rourke makes an appearance as well. I just thought it was fantastic and so underrated. I can't give it enough praise. Really, really can't. I just thought it was so good. It's coming up next to me at the number 7 spot. Is the first Rush Hour film. Yeah, it's a great buddy cop movie. Really, really fun. The film's not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but I just really, really enjoyed the chemistry between Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. I probably enjoyed the second one just a little bit more. The third one, I'm not a big fan of that one, but the first one's the one I grew up watching. Yeah, it's not a guilty pleasure, but it's a pleasurable watch. It's just so much fun. Yeah, the stunts from Jackie Chan and the comedy from Chris Tucker, just really, really great. Still holds up in my opinion. Just a great little action film. Coming up at number 6 for me is probably another really underrated film that not a lot of people have heard about, and that is Happiness. Don't let the title fool you. This film is anything but happy. It deals with some of the most darkest subject matters I've ever seen a film deal with. That with child rape, child paedophilia, rape itself in general. But it just has an absolute stellar cast as well. You got probably the most the standout for me was probably Philip Seymour Hoffman. But just what some of these characters go through and how it depicts what they go through is just really, really disturbing. It doesn't show you a lot of graphic detail. It just lets you imagine it, which is probably even worse. But the film ends on a scene involving a child and a dog, and something the dog licks up, which made me howl with laughter, but it shouldn't have done that. It's just too weird and too disturbing. But the film sort of made it comical. I don't know why, but it's just one that I really, really highly recommend. It needs to be talked about more, this film. It's just super disturbing and super dark. Not for everyone. The subject matter is just probably a bit too strong for some people, but for me, I just thought this movie was just absolutely superb and I enjoyed the hell out of it. Yeah, it's a movie with a set of balls on it to touch on the topics that it does. It's just fantastic and so good. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Getting to a bit more of a lighter film now at number 5 for me, and that is The Wedding Singer. This is just one that I absolutely grew up watching. I think it's just an absolutely fun, charming little film set in the 80s with a great soundtrack. Great cast with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, who just have absolute spot-on chemistry together. The two of them just bounce off each other so well. Yeah, you've got Adam Sandler, who plays Robbie Hart, who's a wedding singer who gets stood up at the altar at his own wedding. You've got Drew Barrymore, who plays Julia, who pretty much works as a waitress for at wedding venues and stuff. And the two of them just sort of really, really hit it off. It's got a will they, won't they sort of vibe to it as well. It leads to one of the most satisfying yet cheesy climaxes that a film has probably ever ended on. But yeah, it's the supporting cast in it as well that make it fun. The brother-in-law, his best friend. Yeah, even Billy Idol shows up in this film, which I just think's just absolutely superb. You know, I love Billy Idol music. I think Eyes Without a Face is probably one of my favourite songs by him. Yeah, Steve Buscemi's in there as well. You know, at the beginning of the film and shows up again at the end. But yeah, it's just super, super fun. There's not really a lot to hate about this. As I said, the soundtrack's absolutely stellar and superb. It's just a fun rom-com that's really, really likeable and has a superb charm to it. So, Coming in at number 4 for me is another really, really good underrated film for me, and that is A Simple Plan. I cannot praise this film enough. It's absolutely fantastic. Directed by Sam Raimi. I think this was the film he did before he started the Spider-Man trilogy. Great cast in this as well. Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton, Bridget Fonda. Great to see Bill Paxton back in a leading role. I think the only ones prior to this were Mighty Joe Young and Twister. But this was really good to see him front and center in his own movie. This film just really, really amplifies his talents, and it's such a shame we lost him when we did, because he was a fantastic actor. The premise to this film is just so interesting as well. It pretty much follows 3 friends, 2 of them are brothers, and they basically stumble across a crashed plane, which is sort of being disguised by snow in the woods. But as they discover this plane, they also find a bag with about $3 million in it. And it's basically, what do they do? What's the right thing to do? Should we turn in the money? Should we keep it? What's the best thing to do? And it just causes this massive rift and distrust between the 3 of them, and it just leads to dire consequences which just spiral out of control. And the film is just absolutely fantastic. It's one of Sam Raimi's best. In my opinion, it's up there with his Evil Dead stuff and Darkman. Probably better than Darkman in my opinion. But yeah, it's just one of those films that never ever gets talked about, and it's just so good. I remember as a kid watching it, not watching it, but I remember it's being advertised on TV and seeing Bill Paxton, and remember it go, oh, that's the guy from Titanic, that's the guy, and True Lies as well. And I remember me and my friends, we sat down and watched it one night, and about 2 weeks later, the news hit that Bill Paxton passed away. It was just so strange and so surreal, and such an honour to watch this film and appreciate it when he was alive. But it was just such a strange feeling. But yeah, I just can't praise this film enough. It's just super suspenseful and super great. If you can get hold of it, I'm not quite sure how accessible it is, but it's superb. If you get the chance to watch it, don't pass up on it. It's fantastic. Yeah, I can't say much more than that about it. So coming in at number 3 for me is Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. Again, this is probably another film that would appear very, very highly on a lot of people's probably favourite film list. It's up there for me with Schindler's List in terms of Spielberg's work. It's just a great, masterfully made film. Pretty much follows a platoon of soldiers who are tasked with finding Private Ryan and basically getting him out of the war because his 3 other brothers have died during service. So basically the army decides, we can't put his mother through any more trauma than what she's already gone through. We have to save her last son. And the film is basically the platoon trying to save him and get him home safely. The opening scenes of this film, I can't really add much more to what's already been said. They're flawless in every sense of the word. You actually feel as if you are there on the beach, being shot at and trying to survive and watching everyone else around you die. It's horrible, but yet so masterfully captured, and just completely doesn't shy away from the brutality of war. Yeah, the cast in this is absolutely stellar as well. Led by Tom Hanks, and even like sort of random people just pop up in the film that you wouldn't expect, like Vin Diesel and Ted Danson and Bryan Cranston. just randomly pop up there as well, which are always sort of fun to see. And of course you got Matt Dillon as Private Ryan himself. Yeah, just I can't say much more than this. It's epic in every sense of the word. So my number 2 film from 1998 is again another really sort of strong, powerful film, and that's American History X. Edward Norton in this film, I've never ever sort of seen a performance like this by an actor. It's just absolute stellar. It's up there for me with Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight and Eric Bogenschon in Talk Radio, and Ben Kingsley from Sexy Beast in some of the most flawless performances I've ever seen in film. But yeah, very, very dark subject matter on race. It sort of follows a family, and the eldest son's played by Edward Norton, and their father was a fireman who was killed by a black gang. And it sort of makes Edward Norton evolve into this sort of neo-Nazi racist. And he tries to sort of spread his ideologies through his family, and particularly his younger brother, played by Eddie Furlong, probably most famous playing John Connor in Terminator 2. And then eventually something happens. I won't dare spoil what it is, but it's one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in film, which leads Edward Norton's character going to prison. He eventually gets released from prison, but he's released a changed man. Doesn't see the world as he used to see it. And he sort of sees that his brother he's frightened his brother could go down that same path that he did. And he doesn't want that. He just wants to change him for the better and move on with their lives, given the tragedy that they've gone through. But the film just leaves on this such downer of a note. You watch it and you just think such a shame. Not in terms of the film itself, but the story. You just feel like the carpet's been pulled from under your legs, and you completely left for six. Just like, what have I just seen? Very, very powerful film. Wonderfully acted, wonderfully shot. I love how the past shots are shot in black and white, and how the present shots are shot in colour. You know, the black and white shots are very right and wrong, and the colour shots are very grey in terms of what parts of the story are being told. Not so much right and wrong, but very mixed, very, very complex and confusing, and not as straightforward as black and white. But yeah, it's just a stellar film. Superb. Can't praise this one enough. Best Edward Norton's ever been. To say that, Elliot Gould in this as well was just absolutely great. Probably most famous for playing Ross and Monica's dad in Friends, but it was great to see him in this. Again, it's just one I can't praise enough. It's absolutely fantastic. Not an easy watch by any means, but everyone should at least see that film once. So my number 1 pick from 1998 is the Coen Brothers' Big Lebowski. I hated this film the first time I saw it. I didn't get it at all. Went completely over my head. But I have warmed to it so much. Each and every time I rewatch it, I think this film is just absolutely fantastic. The film itself feels like all of it is should have made the cutting room floor to a different movie. It just feels like all of the scenes that we wouldn't see in a film, if that makes sense. It's just so strange. You've got Jeff Bridges as the dude, or Jeffrey Lebowski as he's known, gets caught up in sort of mistaken identity, as there's a sort of rich billionaire with the same name as him, whose wife gets kidnapped. And I think it's Jeff Bridges' wife. And it's like, no, you've got the wrong dude. You've got the wrong Lebowski. And it just leads to just such confusion. John Goodman as Walter in this, who is just absolutely obsessed with the Vietnam War and calls it back and relates it to everything, is just absolutely superb. Donnie, played by Steve Buscemi as well, is just absolutely great and just has to constantly put up with the shit from Walter. And he's like, Donnie, you're out of your element. And he's just like, keep whacking him. But yeah, John Goodman's character Walter in this, one of the funniest characters in movies ever for me. A lot of it takes place as well at a bowling alley, which you just sort of see John Goodman's character Walter, who's just obsessed with the rules. He takes it a bit over the top, particularly in one scene, which is just absolutely superb. But it's the little things in this film. It's the little things that make the film for me. You've got John Turturro as well as Jesus, this really sort of intimidating bowler. You've got, as I said, getting it back to John Goodman. John Goodman's the star for me in this film. Just absolutely superb. I love the scene where he brings the little Pomeranian to the bowling alley, and Jeff Bridges is like, why'd you bring the Pomeranian bowling? And he's like, what do you mean brought it bowling? I'm not renting its shoes. I'm not buying it fucking beer. He's not taking your fucking turn. Do you know what I mean, bro? But it just absolutely has me howling with laughter. It's just so funny. And then he absolutely loses his shit when a rival bowler steps over the line when he bowls, and he just ends up pulling a gun out on him because he wants him to mark the score 0. Just absolutely insane stuff that just constantly makes me laugh. The scene as well where the drop-off for this kidnapping goes completely wrong, and they end up at this kid's house who they believe to have stolen the money. And they think he's bought like a really flash car outside, and Walter ends up beating the shit out of this car. But it actually turns out to be a neighbour's car. It's just absolutely insane, and I love every minute of it. It just grew on me so much, and it completely changed my mind the more I watched it. You got Julianne Moore in there as well, as the other Lebowski's daughter. Tara Reid as his sort of trophy wife that ends up getting kidnapped. Flea in there as well as one of the sort of so be it kidnappers. It's just absolutely insane, and I love every minute of it. It's not a film that's for everyone. Of course, you've got Sam Elliott in there as well. Can't forget about him with his just epic mustache and his epic voice. But yeah, as I was saying, it's not a film that's for everyone. It might take a couple of watches to warm up to it, but if you do, fantastic. If you've already warmed up to it the first time you've watched it, even better. But for me, it's my number one pick. I never really get tired of watching it. I just think it's absolutely superb and entertaining as fuck. It's just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful film by the Coen brothers. So yeah, that is my top 20 favourite films from 1998. I hope you've enjoyed it. If I've missed anything off that you think I should check out or watch, there were a lot more films I did see from this year that I did leave off. A lot of stuff I just didn't feel like mentioning, like Bride of Chucky, Bulworth, Mercury Rising, Deep Impact. A lot more movies that I did see but left off. But yeah, if you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and comment. Really helps the channel out, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm hopefully going to be back soon with my top 25 favourite films from 1999. What a year that was. Probably one of the best years in the 90s for me, probably up there with 94. But yeah, massively churned out some great films this year in 1998. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and take care.